Okay, Drew, we are going to, today's session is on the new NAR settlement implementation. For those of you that have been sleeping under the proverbial real estate rock, the implementation of the new process and forms goes into effect officially August 17th. The new forms are available on CAR now. We are going to cover a lot of stuff. I am going to power through this presentation, so please write your questions down and we will have a Q&A session at the end. The reason I'm doing it this way is that we won't get through it if I stop and start taking questions in the middle. Okay? Gerald comes to school unprepared, so so we're going to power through it. Part of this is also helping you be able to talk to your clients. It's not just about understanding the forms. It's about being able to communicate effectively with your clients, your potential clients, and really be able to put yourself in a stronger position than your competition out there, right? So let's jump into it. All right. And David, if you want to jump in,
I'm back on here.
What?
Yeah, I'm back on here. Let's hit the record button if you don't mind. I'm unable to do it on my side.
I think we are recording. Let me check one more time.
Yeah, please, if you can, because I'm not seeing it.
Record? So it's showing as being recorded here on the primary map.
Okay, as long as it's being done, that's fine because I'm getting requests for that. All right, Rich, take it away.
Okay. In the middle of the screen, it says something with that primary map. It says David is requesting to report the meeting. Okay. So good, we're being recorded. And okay, we'll get going. So so first of all, everything we talk about today is available to you. It can be sent to you electronically, including this presentation. Okay. If you have not done so, please register at the front for those of you who are here. And I think we have a recording of everyone who is participating online. So that is available. As I mentioned, we're going to power through. I'll take clarification, and please mute yourself, everyone. We have too large of a group not to be muted, please. And take clarification questions, but we're really going to have the Q&A session in the end, so take notes so you don't forget your questions. Please remember, this is new to everyone. Everyone in this room, everyone in the real estate community. We have feedback. Someone isn't on mute. Can we mute everybody from the front computer, please? This is new to everyone. It is new to David and I, right? David and I spent part of our weekend doing the trainings for this and learning a lot of this stuff ourselves. We will work with this. We will work with you, power through. If we don't know the answer, we will work to get you the answer. We're only going to review the buyer's representation agreement in this class, the listing agreement changes, and the residential purchase agreement changes. There are some other documents that are changing. They are peripheral and associated with this. I'm going to touch on some of them in here, but those are the three forms that we're really going to focus on because that is, the meat and potatoes of the situation. Most importantly, CAR, if you do not know this, they have a free on-demand video training. If you scan the QR code, you will be taken to the store where you can purchase the bundle. You have to be logged on to get it for free. So if you go and purchase it and you're not logged on, they're going to try and charge you $98. If you are logged on, the price it shows is $49. But if you follow the instructions, there is a discount code. I think it's Forms 49. You put that into the discount code and the price will net out as zero. Okay? I highly encourage you to take the online training. As we go through this, and I'm going to speak for myself, David can jump in. We are here to help you. I will take your questions. But if I have a sense that you haven't watched the trainings or done the training yourself, I'm going to ask to see your certificate. When you go through the trainings, there's a certificate at the end. You cannot fast forward through the training. You cannot jump ahead in the training. You got to go through it. This is your business. This is your job. This is how you make money. Make the time to, train yourself and make sure you're up to speed. But we are here to help you and answer questions for you guys, okay? So this is the agenda today. I'm not going to spend time on this slide, really. So let's talk about how people are feeling about this. First of all, for people in the room, because it's a little bit easier than trying to survey, if you guys got questions, drop them into the chat. I'll try and watch them or have someone else help me watch them for those of you who are online. But for those of you in the room, how many of you are at least somewhat anxious about some of the changes? Okay, let's be honest here. Okay, we got about half the room, I'd say. It's a change, right? Life is full of changes. This is not a, situation as dire as some people are trying to make it. If you spend too much time on real estate social media pages, like on Facebook, I think I drew all of these examples. These examples I'm going to give you from, there's a real estate page called Real Estate Mastermind on Facebook. These posts all come from there, if I recall correctly. So you get into a negative mindset because so many people try and put you in a negative mindset, right? Please mute yourself. Can we see if we can mute from the primary computer? Thank you. My broker says that it's best after 17th to become a listing agent. That's a little fatalistic. Let me go back. If I were a buyer looking to buy a new home, I wouldn't sign jack to see a house. Buyer's agents are screwed. This was a posting, right? Right. I mean, it can be very, very negative. So this is a little video, kind of humorous, I think, about how people are reacting to this. And warning, this and the next video have a little bit of cursing in it. I apologize for that. These clips are from the movie Aliens, which is one of my favorite movies. It's celebrating its 30th anniversary. So that's how a lot of people are reacting. They're wigging out, right? But you have a choice. I can get to the next screen. You have a choice as to how to handle adversity and change. So hopefully we're getting sound. Let me check here. Uh-oh, now I'm getting feedback. No volume, no volume. Shows $98 charge. Nazi. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that, but hopefully people online can hear me, even if they couldn't hear the video. If you
We
can't,
can hear.
okay, great. So here's the number one thing to take away. And keep in mind, I am not advocating a Will Smith on anyone, okay? But this cartoon is used on the internet all the time.
Yeah.
We're getting feedback probably from that computer. No, not there. I can't mute myself because this is how I'm heard. So this is the number one thing to take away. I don't care what people are saying online. I don't care what news reports are saying. Buyer's agent commission being paid potentially by the seller is not going away. Okay. The next thing to take away, and for those of you, especially those of you who have been working with me and participating with me in the accountability group, no, I say this all the time. Right, Tish? Life is only as good as your mindset, and that goes for your business too.
Going up there.
Oh, is it coming from this? I don't know what's going on.
Oh, dude.
If you have a negative mindset, you are setting yourself up for failure. This is really not any kind of disastrous change. It is just a change. It is an opportunity, and you've got to have the mindset that this is an opportunity. So, what does the NAR settlement really call for? So here are the major requirements. NAR and affiliated associations cannot require sellers to pay buyer's agent compensation. Second, potential buyers must, and I'm going to emphasize must, have a signed buyer's representation agreement in order to view homes or to make offers or anything else, but even to view homes, that's the starting point. Next thing. So that representation agreement must have a duration period. It must cover the locations that the agreement covers, the geographic areas, and it must spell out a maximum compensation amount. And I'm going to get into this later on. Seller paid compensation cannot appear on the MLS. Okay. So those are the major requirements. So let's jump into how the new forms address this. So we'll start with the buyer's representation and broker's compensation agreement. This is form BRBC. This will become second nature to you as a buyer's agent. So you here in the office, the people have handouts, but I've basically cut segments of the new forms out, and I'm going to discuss them. So this is section 2 of the buyer's representation agreement. Couple of things. So you have to have a beginning and ending date for your representation agreement. Note the maximum amount of time the agreement can cover is 90 days without being renewed. Okay, let me say that again. Your buyer's representation agreement maximum duration is 90 days without renew, and then afterwards it needs to be renewed. Okay. Next, and this is for me, I still produce. This is a major thing for me. So the agreement defaults to being a non-exclusive agreement. That means if you do not take action by checking the box that says exclusive, your buyer is free to work with other agents. So if you want to have an exclusive relationship with your client, and in my case, that is my objective, you have to make sure this box is checked. Okay. Next, the types of properties that are covered. Sorry, I don't.
If I look and see if there's a
Yeah,
volume on there.
Go right ahead. Sorry, we're trying to get rid of some feedback here in the office, apparently coming from the projector. No, it's coming from the projector. So anyway, let me continue on because we have a lot to cover. It covers the specific types of properties that are covered by this agreement. Why would a buyer want this? So, for example,
I saw mute. It's in mute.
if I mute this, then people can't hear my microphone. You want to give them a pen or pencil? Give them Joe, give them a pen or pencil to do it. Sorry, we're having some feedback issues here. Is that better? Yes. Okay. Oh, why would
I was helped.
a buyer want to restrict the types of properties that are covered by a buyer's representation agreement? So what if you are a real estate investor and you work with a particular agent, say in the East County part of Contra Costa, buying multiple families, and that's your person, but you want to buy a single family home for yourself in Walnut Creek. Maybe you don't want to restrict yourself to all types of property throughout the entire county. You want to be able to work with your investment specialist in East County, Contra Costa, and you want to work with, they want to work with you for buying their primary residence in Central Contra Costa. That is why you can restrict the types of properties that the buyer's representation agreement covers. All right. The next major thing, and remember, this is a requirement of the settlement. You have to agree on where this agreement covers. So it does not automatically cover the entire state of California. You have to define that specifically. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, is if this is not filled out, you do not have a binding agreement.
That is correct. You need to put, you can put the state of California, but you got to put something.
You got to put something in this location field. So I personally have started using buyer's representation a few months ago, and I actually already have started this with a couple of newer clients. I personally put the counties that I work in. So I primarily work in Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano. You can put cities, you can even define zip codes or what have you, whatever you want. I would encourage you to try and be as broad as possible in defining your locations. Why? What if you put a whole, let's say someone says, I want to buy in San Ramon, Dublin, or Pleasanton. And those are the cities you put in, and they end up buying in Alamo. Are you covered? No. And this happens. We all know this happens. So I would encourage you to try and be as broad as possible in your definition of the locations that this agreement covers.
Put state of California. Just put that in.
There's no description. You could put all of California if you wanted to. Yes. So the question was, where would you put all of California or some other type of description? So that's in the additional description field. Properties excluded from representation. So this is where you define with your buyer properties that this agreement doesn't cover. And this is typically for properties that they may have seen with another agent. Right? They should have copies of their any previous buyer representation agreement. And if it expired or was canceled, that agent is supposed to deliver a list of all the properties they've seen. And that's for all agents. If you have an expired or canceled buyer's representation agreement, in general, you have 5 days to give that buyer a list of the properties you have seen, have participated or analyzed for them or shown them in order to claim compensation if they're ever bought or sold. If your buyer's I was asked to repeat that just for those of you online. So if your buyer's representation agreement expires or is canceled, you have 5 days to give your buyer, that ex-buyer, a list of all of the properties you have been involved with. That, even if you haven't shown them, but say you've read through all the disclosures and sent them a summary. Anything related to helping them analyze a property they might purchase, you give them a list that protects you from them going out and buying it with someone else without you getting compensated. I'm not taking questions now. You gotta write them down. I'm going to stop taking questions. So, because I won't get anywhere. I hate to be rude, but I got to power through. So write your questions down. I'll answer clarification questions, like if I'm not being clear, but scenarios and things like that, we're going to take at the end. So, because we got a lot to do here. Okay, sorry to be, I don't mean to be rude, but I got to power through. And yeah, I see the people online, so just put your questions online in the chat and we will get to them at the end. Okay, so the next section, buyer's representation agreements, section E. You have to have your compensation amount in section E of the buyer's representation agreement. Note, this is the maximum compensation you can earn from your buyer. Okay, so if you're saying, oh, I'll work for you for 1%, and you were to submit a offer and they're willing to pay 2.5%, you can only earn 1%. Okay, so keep in mind, you want to make sure you are putting in your maximum. The other thing about the compensation schedule is you see there is a box that says see attached compensation schedule. So if you want to create your own compensation schedule, you can. So the notion that's been floating around that agent compensation is buyer agent compensation is going away, it can only be paid by the buyer, all of that is not true. But if you do have your own compensation schedule, it has to be in writing and it has to have the signature and date of the buyer indicating that they have seen it and agreed to it. Okay, don't just attach something with no signatures on it, because then we don't know if they ever saw it or agreed to it. It has to be signed and dated. Okay. Next thing, so continuation period. So that's what I was talking about. If this expires and you want to send that list of, hey, I helped you look at these 20 houses. If you buy any of these 20 houses, the continuation period is if you buy any of these 20 houses in the next 60, 90, 120 days, that is what is covered in that box. If you leave that box blank, the continuation days, then it is 0 by definition. Right? You are waiving your right to claim any future compensation for homes that you participated in. So you have to fill that blank box in. Next thing, cancellation. So non-exclusive, if you do non-exclusive, upon receipt, the agreement is canceled. But if you do an exclusive agreement, by default, you have cancellation effective 30 days after receipt. Now, that is not to say you cannot write in a term that says cancellation is effective immediately, but this is the default. So I personally write in, you send me written notice and I'll cancel it. That also should help people get over their fear of being committed to, oh, I don't know you, what have you. And I personally, when I work with someone, if you don't want to work with me, I don't want to work with you. So I'm more than willing to let you go. But this is the default, 30 days for exclusive. So section G, and this is a little bit of a change. So time to deliver buyer personal financial information. So technically, because the buyer is now legally on the hook for your compensation, you can ask for essentially more information than some people would historically about their financial position. In other words, you need to know, are you going to get paid? And the default is they have to provide you with, bank statements, get a pre-approval, whatever that you agree to within 5 days, or whatever the fill in the blank, whatever number of days that is. 3 days, 2 days, and my dogs are getting cranky. Anyway, so they have to do this. This is something that now really helps you with your position and really helps you, get more commitment out of the buyer. Section G2, the buyer can indicate that they do not have sufficient funds to pay you directly. This is often going to come up with first-time buyers who are doing, 95, 97, 100% financing. And this can even come up with people who might have more, but it's literally a very tight, narrow window for them. If there is no seller paid compensation, they don't have the money to help you or to compensate you. So if they check this box in G2, they are informing you that the only way you are going to get compensated, theoretically, is through seller provided compensation for the buyer's agent. Okay. Buyer intends to use a loan product that restricts them from compensating the broker. I thought that VA had this, and one of our model agents told me that VA is changing their rules to allow buyer compensation. I had not seen that. So, but if there might be some loan products out there that restrict compensation to the buyer's agent.
Yeah, we can confirm that the loan officers, model loan officers, are aware of that now. Also,
yeah.
that yes, that modification has been made.
Yeah. So VA buyers can compensate the agent directly, which was prohibited before. So the last thing I'm going to point out here, for any of you who have had any contract discussions with me in the past, or just in general, one of my favorite boxes on just about every form is the other terms. Why? Because this is your opportunity to customize the agreement to meet your needs and the client's needs. So for example, and these are terms that you might want to use. I'm not saying you have to use these exact terms or anything, but they're just things you could include here. So the agreement is canceled upon receipt of written request. Exclusive agreement. Agent has 5 days to deliver property. Broker played a role in viewing or reviewing for the buyer, right? So if you want to get them out of the 30-day and let them cancel immediately, you should put that in your other terms. Buyer has indicated in G2 they do not have the funds to pay the broker. Buyer agrees broker is entitled to compensation and will not purchase any property where the seller does not provide adequate compensation. So what does that mean? This kind of term would say, hey, Mr. Buyer, I know you don't have the money to pay me directly. If you're going to work with me, you agree to only buy a home that the seller is going to pay compensation to me. Because that is not covered, to my knowledge, anywhere else in the document. So if you're working with people who have limited excess funds or additional funds to be able to pay you directly, you need to say, hey, I know you don't have the funds, but you have to understand you can't buy, if your dream house doesn't enable me to get compensated by the seller, this is not a deal. Okay? You need to specify that, to my knowledge, because that kind of language is not anywhere else in the agreement, to my knowledge. Pardon me?
It says cash compensation schedule.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, you can't, yeah, I'll come back to that. Other terms. So remember I said that when you put in your compensation, it is the maximum you can get. So you can add, say, pay 3% in there, but you can add a term saying my minimum compensation is 2.5%. Right? So if a seller is offering 3%, you, quite honestly, from a business perspective, don't want to leave money on the table. But you might tell your client, hey, as long as I get 2.5%, though, we can move forward. You need to put that in your other terms because it isn't spelled out anywhere else, or you can put it in your schedule of compensation, like Joe was saying before. Okay. So this is section 16 of the buyer's representation agreement. It confirms the compensation you are to get. When you fill that block out earlier in the buyer's representation agreement, I think it was area 2 or 3, I can't remember, it will autofill this block. Why are they doing this again? Why are they showing it again? Because when you submit an offer and ask for seller concessions to pay for buyer's agent commission, the seller has the right to ask for proof that that's the amount of commission you are owed. So instead of sending them the entire broker's representation agreement, which may have some of your client's other personal information, you only send them the last page of the agreement. And it will show here, and it has their signatures below. Pardon me?
Number 5.
Page 5, yes. All right, so I'm going to repeat that. The seller has the right to ask for verification of the buyer's agent compensation if they're agreeing to do so. You send the last page of the buyer's representation agreement, which has box 16 or section 16 on it, and the signatures from the buyer and the broker, the listing agent, on it. That's the only page you send to the seller. You do not send them the entire buyer's representation agreement. Okay? So now we're going to move to the residential listing agreement. The good thing, not much has changed.
Rich,
Marissa,
if you don't mind, let me interrupt you real quick.
Yep.
I was going to say that we've got some questions in the chat regarding that last agreement. So if you could just take a look at that, please. Maybe we can answer
Okay,
those.
let me go back. Okay, so the question, when is that given? When is that given with the offer, right? So you don't necessarily have to give it with the offer because it's not required, but the seller has the right to ask for it. I personally am not offering it unless I'm asked. Okay, other question, why would the seller want that? The seller, they may want to see that you're not asking for more money than is agreed to for some reason. Like the way it shows up is just an additional concession. So they may want to make sure they're limiting the amount of their concession. The other thing is it's just good for, quite honestly, as paperwork tracking and doing due diligence for your client as a listing agent. All right. All right, hold on just a second. I'm just trying to get process. Does that comes to auto-populate? Yes, it does auto-populate. This in section 16, it auto-populates from, I think it's section 2 or 3 above in this form on the first page. Okay. Was there another process question or clarification? So the question is for the box that shows that the buyer does not have money to pay you directly. How can you repeat? How do you send it electronically? So it's just like any other, you just send a DocuSign and put the check boxes, giving them the option to check or what have you. So it's perfectly possible. They just check the box, but your other terms. So I went through with some other possible terms. When you type that out as the listing agent, it will show up in a text addendum, just like text addendum show up automatically. Okay. And I'm getting weird feedback again. Please be on mute. It is not required to show the BRBC before you show the home. There is, to my knowledge, where did this, what in the world happened? There we go. So the question was, is it required to show the BRBC before showing a home? No, that is not mandated. Now, maybe someone is going to try and do that for their own listing. I personally don't want all the paperwork or emails, quite honestly, but it is not mandated by CAR. Yogi, I'm going to come back to some of your questions, okay? I want to get through this. Oops. So now we're going to move to the residential listing agreement. Good thing, not much has changed. So as always, you have a beginning and ending time. The key, one thing they've added on here, which probably is not a big deal for most of us, is that it's a reminder that the maximum amount of time that you can take a listing from an individual or group of people, a human group of people, is 24 months. That is by law in California, unless the seller is an entity such as an LLC, corporation, something like that. Then you're not restricted to 24 months. As always, you need your listing price in there, or else it isn't valid. Okay. Next thing. Compensation. So this really hasn't changed. You add in your compensation, you can have an attached compensation schedule just like in the BRBC. Once again, it needs to be signed. It needs to be dated if you're going to have your own schedule. Additional compensation for unrepresented buyer. So if someone walks into your open house, they don't have an agent and they want to buy the property, sure, you can do that for them. And you need to spell out, though, to your seller what the charge is for that. What are you charging them to do that? And it is just like any transaction, you probably do want to charge for it. My suggestion, you're not required to, but it is an additional expense for you because at ROG and just about every other brokerage that I'm aware of, they consider it two transactions, the buyer transaction and the seller transaction. And thus you have the associated fees and expense and paperwork that's with that. The second aspect of why I don't think, in my opinion, you don't want to do unrepresented buyers for free is not only do you have the expenses, but you and Realty One Group take on the liability, right? And anytime, personally, I hear people complain about, oh, you know, agents get paid so much, you guys don't do much work. It's the work and the liability that you take on, right? So, but I don't think this is, this doesn't exist in the existing form. Is that correct? This section? So now you have to spell that out ahead of time. Okay. Oops. Okay, this is key. Dow, are you paying attention? This is for you. So section E, property will be marketed on MLS. No big deal, right? C-Car MLSA. This is a new form. So in the listing agreement right now, or the old listing agreement, there was a section about what it means to be on the MLS and what happens. They pulled all of that out of the listing agreement. It is now in this form. You go, why does that matter? I don't care. It's not, it's never been an important, quote unquote, important section in the in the listing agreement. Well, now it is. Because if your seller is going to allow you to advertise that they are offering buyer agent concessions to pay the compensation, if they're allowing you to advertise that ahead of time to either other agents or the public, they need to fill out a section of form MLSA. If you do not fill this out, you are not supposed to disclose the willingness of the seller to offer concessions. When you do a listing agreement, MLSA is automatically part of the set of documents that come out with the listing agreement. You know, they have the agency document, which is first, they have this, and then they're going to have the MLSA automatically attached to the listing agreement. But it's blank. You have to proactively fill out the listing agreement. So here is the relevant section of form MLSA. Section 5, subsection B. Dow, this is your section, because Dow, and the reason I keep picking on Dow is Dow has told me in the past, I'm not taking listings unless they pay 2.5 to the buyer's agent. Okay, I'm not doing it. I'm not taking it. So this is how Dow will ensure that she can let people know that there is buyer agent compensation. The default is that you cannot advertise nor discuss concessions without permission. To do that, you have to do two things. Check box in B2. Now you're saying seller authorizes broker to put in MLS that seller is willing to consider offers asking for concessions. So technically, it's not only just the buyer's agent compensation concession, it's any concession. But really, it's about the buyer's commission. That's what the practical result is. Second part, even if permitted by the MLS, no amount of the possible concession is to be stated in the MLS, either as a percent or of the purchase price or a flat fee, unless the seller notifies the broker in writing of that amount. So even if they check the box, you cannot put a specific amount unless they give you a written authorization to do so. So checking the box is not enough. I'm going to cover that. I'm going to cover how I would do that. You can get a separate letter as long as it's signed and dated by all the relevant parties. But I will tell you how I plan to address that, and David can jump in if he has any questions. But I'm going to emphasize this again. If you want to be able to advertise the ability to take concessions and specifically the amount of concessions considered, you have to check the box. And if you want to talk about the specific amount, you have to get agreement from your seller in writing to that amount. And that's for all concessions, not just buyer's agent compensation. This is in Form MLSA. You will get used to that form name. Okay. So now, residential purchase agreement. There's one critical change in the purchase agreement. This is section G. I don't remember what number it is. This is the section in the residential purchase agreement that covers concessions. I'll hold while you guys find the right page. We have a lot of paper shuffling going on right now.
Page 2 of the RPA.
No, residential
page 2.
purchase agreement, California residential purchase agreement.
Page 2 of the RPA.
It's not going. It should. It's not going to look exactly what's on the screen because I take snapshots so I can blow it up. If I try and put the whole page on it, it just looks like.
It's page 2 of RPA.
If you did not get a maybe the printer didn't work or something.
The page, I think. It says at the bottom, RPA.
Okay. So, California purchase agreement, the main change that you have to pay attention to, and this is critical. If you do not do this, this is going to cause tears.
Oh, no.
Okay, so this is why I'm emphasizing it. I'm not going through the whole RPA. There are other, relatively minor changes, but this is the meat of the major changes. Section G1 is seller credits. You can ask for credits for repairs, whatever. And you can say whether it's going to be applied to closing or they're going to pay contractors or what have you. This is the standard that's already in the RPA. Additional finance terms, that's already in the RPA. What's new is G3. Seller agrees to pay obligation of buyer to compensate buyer's broker, separate agreement. What does this mean? This means that you are asking the seller to pay the buyer's agent commission. If you do not check this box, the seller is not obligated to give you the concession.
Even if they did the MLS saying.
They can't, well, if they write it in the MLS, that's fine, but that is no longer binding. You have to have,
do that.
you have to have this box checked.
Okay.
If you are a buyer's agent, you are expecting the seller to give you a concession to pay for the buyer's agent compensation. Box G3 has to be checked. And I'm going to come back to what happens if G3 isn't checked. That's going to be in a little while. But I'm going to say it one more time. That's how important it is. Section G3 on the RPA, if you are expecting the seller to pay any compensation to the buyer's agent, G3 has to be checked. Okay? That's how you're going to get paid for most of your deals, quite honestly. So just get used to it. It seems very innocuous. It's probably the most important box on the form now to a lot of agents. So when you check that box, it creates another form called seller payment to buyer's broker. And it's actually a very simple form. It's one page. You just fill in the amount and it should match whatever you're asking for, but it cannot exceed what's on your buyer's representation.
It can't exceed.
Exceed,
It cannot.
not exceed the amount on your buyer's representation fees. Max, the max amount.
Okay.
All right, guys, I have to take a little drink. All right. This form is actually very simple to fill out. It's like I said, it's like 2 or 3 paragraphs. I think this is the only fill in the blank on the whole document other than the signatures. Okay. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a few questions right now on the forms, and then I'm going to get into how do we talk to clients about all of this stuff, because to me, you can figure out the forms hopefully sooner rather than later, but you can figure them out. It's really being able to talk to your clients as soon as possible and be comfortable doing it, right? So let me go into the chat and see what kind of questions there are on the actual forms. Okay, I'm going back, hold on. No volume, okay, I can't see the videos. Is there a maximum number of days in E3? Let me go back and find E3, because I don't remember what E3 is.
Rich, I think that was on the other form.
That's the
On the buyer's rep.
BRBC.
On the buyer's rep form.
BRBC.
Oh, is there a maximum number of days? David, I don't know. Do you? Do you know if there's a maximum number of days?
I don't think so. Yeah, I'm not aware of a maximum number of days.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't think there's a maximum for, how I will probably do it is probably 90 to 120 days. Because quite honestly, after 90 days, I'm going to forget about it. I've moved on. I'm working on other clients.
All right, Lisa just commented, Rich, Lisa just commented that it said 90 days on the form, 3 months on the form.
Oh, okay, maybe I missed that. Okay.
Hey, Rich, can you go back one slide prior to this on the BRBC?
This one?
Yeah, go back one more slide.
Let me make sure I'm going in the right direction. Okay.
Actually, one more slide before this one.
Yes. This one?
Yes. No, actually, one more. I think it was box C I wanted to take a look at.
Oh, box C.
Yeah. So additional buyer preferences and priorities. Do we have to fill that out or can we leave it blank?
No, it is not required. But your buyer may want to fill it out, but quite honestly, in my opinion, the more you narrow your scope of search, the more likely you are not to get paid. So if they're insistent that you only show, you're only their agent for 2-bedroom condos with 1 bathroom and an enclosed garage, they can specify that. Now, would I take that client? Probably not. But that's just me. But you can specify it, but it's not required.
Okay. Okay, great.
Hey, Rich, I have a question about BRBC form. So you mentioned earlier that it's not a requirement to show the home with the BR. We don't have to submit the BRBC form to the listing agent to show the home. So let's say if I show the home to the buyer without the BC form, is there any issue with that?
Yes, it specifically breaks the rules, Yogi.
No, I understand that. I understand that. No, I understand that it breaks the rule. What I'm saying is, let's say if I show the home without the BC form.
No, you're not showing the home without a BRBC form, Yogi.
They're not represented.
You're not represented. I mean, David and I can't tell you what if I show it without it, because we're telling you, you have to. I mean, we can't go, oh, don't worry about it if you do it or not. So I'm going to tell you that this question is not, you can't even ask me this question. You have to have the agreement to show the home.
No, I know.
Yes,
I would like to interrupt. There was another form that if you were Yogi, if you want to show a property without and keep it simple, you can use PSRA document, which allows you to show a property for 30 days and only 3 properties, which is
Yes,
called the
I'm
property
gonna-
showing and representing agreement.
No, the
Here's
reason
another
I-
form that is more short-term than the buyer representation agreement. I'm gonna cover that in a little while. I forget what it's called, but essentially it allows you to show up to 3 homes over a period of 30
Yes,
days.
it's
Okay.
called PSRA, property showing and representing agreement. And it's used only to show 3 properties and it's valid for 3 days.
30 days,
30
yeah.
days, sorry. Yes.
But you
You
still
know,
need the
Rich,
agreement for one house.
I had a quick question.
Uh-huh. Question, go ahead. Uh-oh, we lost you. Did I mute someone? Oh, sorry. We accidentally muted everybody. Go ahead with your question. I don't know who it was who was speaking.
Rich, I have a follow-up question that, regarding the BRBC form, because if I take my form this to my client, most likely my client will say, okay, I'm not signing it because I'll be liable to pay this commission. I'm going directly to the listing agent. So how you
I'm
are?
going to cover that momentarily.
Yogi, good salesperson, Yogi, you could do it.
Any other questions about?
Yes, Rich, I have one regarding the BFPI, which is the buyer's financial and personal information document, which by law we are supposed to ask the buyer and they're supposed to give it to us within 5 days. This is their financial, like proof of funds, correct? Now, once we receive this, are we supposed to send it to Navid, to our brokerage right away? Or I am more concerned about what we have to do with our brokerage. Our BRBC document, we have to send it to Realty One right away?
Yeah,
No,
so-
sorry,
Go ahead.
I'll jump in real quick. Guys, so you guys might be signing a lot of these forms. It may end up turning into something. It may not end up turning into something. We've been very lenient in the past, right? That, hey, if you have, keep records, all records, right? Of everything. But the main thing, and I'm working with our compliance team as well to see that, hey, what's the best way to not inundate everybody with all of this, and make it so intrusive and just to a point where you're just like, okay, we're all drowning in forms. So for every offer that is getting accepted, make sure you include that in your compliance file, right? I'm not so concerned at this juncture. That might change depending on how, DRE starts looking at this and all that. And guys, by the way, I'm on several webinars and Zooms and meetings with corporate and non-corporate folks, and it's a moving target. You will see changes again shortly, by December the latest, but they're already planning some changes also because these are all written. Lawyers are writing this, and then now we're doing the implementation. So you have to look at the practicality and the pragmatic aspects of these forms, right? So expect some changes. But to answer your question, to anyone else, keep records of this as yourself on the transactions that transpire and get ratified. Then yes, then submit it. But other than that, just keep it for your own records.
Okay, so for compliance purposes, because, after we have all these documents, that's what my question was. What do we do with it? Do we send it on Sky Slow? Because sometimes these buyers, we can't convert or they get lost. So we don't have to send it to you. That's what I understood.
Just please keep it under a Christmas tree for yourselves. And then hopefully if it transpires into a deal, great. But but thank you for asking that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, David.
Okay.
Hey,
Some
Rich,
other questions. So how about
Rich,
representing buyer in new construction homes? Do we need to fill out buyer's representation agreement? Yes. Everything. If you're representing the buyer, you now need an agreement. Okay. If you want to get paid, you need an agreement. Next question from Kang. Do I need to sign a BRBC form if I meet my client at an open house after they show up first, trying to find loopholes? I'm going to cover open houses momentarily. Next from Lisa, for the end of the for the end of training, since we now require buyers to sign a BRBC or P, do we have resources to fill those documents in field via mobile? Can you do these via mobile? Technically, yes. Trying to fill out a CAR form on your phone, good luck. But you can do it on iPad for those of you who have iPads or whatever. But you can do it on your phone. It's just challenging. And then Nazi, I don't understand your question. What is A about MLS?
It does say you guys saying MLSA.
That's the
And-
name of the form. Multiple Listing Service Addendum. That's the name of the form.
So my question is, are they changing to MLSA, or it just, we used to have it MLS? Are they changing it to A extra?
It's just a form. That's just the name of the form. It's a new form. They've taken out the part of the old listing agreement that talked about the MLS, and they have put it into the MLSA form. And the MLSA form, if you want to talk about compensation your seller will offer to buyer's agents, you have to fill out the MLSA form. Okay?
Okay.
All
Thank
right. And then so Yogi, if BRBC form says 2% commission and seller offering 3%, does the rest go to the buyer? So there is no rest because the maximum they have to pay, I believe, and jump in, David, if I'm wrong, is what is in your BRBC. So even if they're offering 3%, they don't have to pay your buyer the 3%. They only have to pay the 2% for the compensation. Is that correct as far as you know, David?
As far as I know, and the main thing though is I think as pointed out, you're going to start using the SP BB form a lot, and make sure that you're doing that maximum compensation, like Rich said, on the BRBC form here to make sure. So Yogi, it might be arguable that, oh, you know, that extra money should go as a rebate to the buyer and things like that. So that's the pragmatic approach of what everyone's looking at, is that how is the functional aspect of it going to happen when you're actually getting a transaction done as of August 17th and you're starting to do this. And in the chat, Rich, Eddie also pointed out that he's already getting, and some of you guys may already be using the SPBB form already. Which is fine. It's been in the RPA for a long time already. But at the same time, what is that extra compensation, if there is any, you know, and you guys can always do a modification, by the way, to the BRBC. I'm cracking up on all these acronyms now, but on the BRBC form, there is a modification. There's a MOT, I believe it's a modification of BRBC form also that can be done. So if, let's say you agreed to 2% and you want to modify it to 3%, there's ways to do it. Okay, so there are some loopholes for the Kangs of the world that are looking for loopholes. And Yogi, that's it. And by the way, I'd be remiss to not wish Joe Tagupa a happy birthday from
Yeah, Joe,
400 miles away.
Happy birthday.
Okay, so back to this, guys. We're gonna there's gonna be modifications. There's gonna be it's gonna be rough and a little edgy in the beginning, and then it'll smooth out. But definitely get to know the SPP form. You got to make sure that the seller is going to be, and you guys, we can take a poll, unscientific poll here, but how many listing agents are talking to their sellers right now? And from the most of the data that I'm gathering, all the sellers that are offering compensation still. There hasn't been this shift in direction of not offering compensation. Who knows if sellers will just say, hey, forget it, I don't want to offer compensation anymore to a buyer's agent. But right now, it seems like they're doing business as usual in offering compensation.
And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I think and who are the most likely. When are the times you're most likely to see zero or very small amounts? And I think it's going to be pretty rare, quite honest. Tish.
My question is, when it comes to actually getting paid, and you have all these forms, which of these forms are all of them go to title?
Through escrow.
So the question is, which of these forms go to title? So you're definitely, That's a good question. So,
I'll jump in there too. It's
Okay.
definitely gonna, if the seller's compensating, then yeah, let's get that form to title if there's any question of that, right? The thing is, you're still gonna send, we're still gonna send a commission demand. You guys are still gonna send the ACF to us, and we're gonna generate a commission demand, and we'll let the instructions to this escrow company know that, hey, compensation is being paid by seller. And depending on how escrow will be about it, they'll be like, hey, if there's any, if the seller's refuting it through via the listing agent, they're refuting it to escrow and saying, no, we're not compensating the buyer's agent, then we'll provide the form. So great question, but just make sure you got your I's dotted, T's crossed, and everything, and it's not just on a handshake. Okay.
How can the buyer pay through?
it's part of their closing costs.
It is,
They
no
would
matter
bring
what.
in
Okay,
Closing
okay.
costs.
Cool. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So if the seller agrees to pay compensation on the listing agreement and they check the box saying, yes, it can be displayed on the MLS. Well, one, if they don't write the letter, how does that display on MLS? Does it display, yes, a concession? The seller's willing to concession?
Yeah, so the question was, if your seller agrees to advertise that they're willing to pay concessions, how does that show up on the MLS? It's going to depend on which MLS you're talking about. I was actually on the CCAR site yesterday because that's the board I belong to, and that's part of Paragon. So I assume it's going to be similar for East Bay East. They will have a field that says, if I recall correctly, will seller pay concession to buyer's agent? It's basically a yes/no field.
Okay. And then how do you do, if they do the letter?
If they do the letter, my recommendation, and I don't know because I have not studied the MLS rules on this. I've only been focused on the CAR part of this. Is you can put that in the confidential remarks, but you have to make sure you have your paperwork that does that. I do not believe you can advertise that necessarily publicly, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Oh, hold on, Lucy.
Well, going back to this question, if the seller agrees, marks the box, can we add it in an addendum, or it has to be a special letter?
No, it does not have to be a special letter. It can be handwritten if you want. The real key is signatures and dates.
Item E3, please. Continuous rights to payment. What's reasonable?
It's up to you. So the question is, how long is the continuation? What's a reasonable amount for a continuation? I personally will probably do it for 60 to 90 days because after that, I'm going to forget, and B, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to chase someone for 2 years later.
Is the broker going to have a standard compensation schedule list, or each agent is to do their own?
So you have the right to set your own compensation. NABIT does not have a standard compensation amount. You're responsible for the ROG fees and things like that. The real key is if you want to do your own compensation schedule, it has to be in writing. It has to have signatures. If you have any questions about, hey, I'm thinking about doing, so some people have suggested, hey, I might just do a $3,000 fee up front, and if they're offering any compensation, then I'll take up to 2% or something like that. Or they might have some other kind of schedule. If you want that to be your schedule, to my knowledge, that's fine. It has to be written. It has to be signed by the parties involved.
And this brokers, I'm sorry, and this BRBC, do we have to be here and have something in writing to the buyer stating, say they signed an agreement for 30 days, right? They don't want to sign it for longer than 30. But we cannot go out there every single day to show properties to the same buyers. Should we be clear on how many days a week we can go out there with the same buyer and show properties? Maybe?
So the question is, do you have to specify essentially what your availability is during the agreement period? I would say no. It doesn't. There isn't a requirement. You can add that in to set expectations. The way I kind of do it is if you expect me to be at your beck and call every day, 6 days, 7 days a week, we are not the right.
Call down.
Yeah, we're not the right. We're not the good fit.
Call down.
So you can, don't call down. So the question, okay, let's keep it together. So the question is, do you have to specify your availability? I would say no, and I personally want to keep my flexibility. If they're really hot and ready to buy and they're ready to look, I will show you every day. If you're hot, ready to buy, and you have cash, I'll show you houses every day, all day. Okay. But if I've been showing you houses for 3 months and you always come up with a reason not to buy, I'm not going to obligate myself to show you houses 6 days a week. So my suggestion is leave yourself open. Question.
Was, you stated earlier about the buyer must put in writing and sign it for the price.
Mhm.
So that goes with just everything that we're doing. We got to have that in writing. He has to write his own little form and
If you
sign it and
don't
do.
amount on them.
Okay.
So yes, if you want to advertise seller paid buyer's agent commission or any other concession, it has to be the box has to be checked. If you want to advertise a specific amount, you need it in writing. How I'm going to do that is I probably will not have a separate form. I will probably include that in what field? The other field. I will write that in the other field and just have them sign it as part of the document.
But he has to sign it for sure.
You have to sign, it has to be written, it has to be signed, and it has to be dated.
Got it.
That's on the other form, when you put other form in it, and you got more text in it, it will create.
It automatically creates a text addendum. Okay, so we're going to move on because I want to get to how you talk.
Rich, I have one question.
Who is this?
It's Michelle.
Hey,
I'm on
Michelle.
Zoom. Okay, on the RPA, you said that it's a must that you have to check G3, to generate the SPBB.
Yes.
What if it wasn't checked and the seller is compensating the buyer's broker? How do you remedy that? Do you do an addendum?
So you can do an addendum, and I'm going to cover that in a few minutes. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That's a good question, though. Okay, so let's talk about communicating with your clients, because that's really what this boils down to in my book. You can learn to do the forms, but you got to learn to talk to your clients. So one, especially for the buyer side, if you don't know and can't articulate your value, you're going to struggle. Right? It's no longer, if you say, oh, well, I'll take you to see houses. Woo, that's exciting. You have to be able to know how you're going to differentiate yourself from other buyers agents out there. Why should they sign a document saying that they'll pay you up to 2.5% when they've never had to do that? Right? Or 3%, whatever you're asking for. So be able to talk about and have your story, your value proposition ready. And I'm going to make an offer to people in the class to help you practice this at the end, okay? You are not at a disadvantage in the market compared to everyone else. Every realtor in California is in the same position. You don't have to worry about, oh, Realty One's the only one doing this. I can go over to Keller Williams and not do this. No, everyone's in the same boat. So keep that in mind. Right? Everyone's playing by the same rules. Everyone. Unless they're not a realtor and they're just an agent doing their own thing, or a broker, not part of the association. So when you talk to clients, and I've had these conversations already, I've been practicing this with buyers. When it comes up, and I'm going to talk about how I bring this up, but I would actually go through and get some clippings. So about half the people I talk to have heard something about the NAR settlement. Half the people have no idea what's going on. It's just like any news item. So I would create some clippings to show, yeah, this was a big deal. It's a major change. It's affecting the entire country. I would say, if you're going to look for clippings, be careful in the headlines you choose. Some of them are like The end of the 6% commission, I don't want to bring that clipping. Okay, I don't want to set any price expectations or anything else. Just that there was something major going on. So I would say you need to do this and have it available for every client, buyer and seller that you talk to show, hey, this is an industry change. I'm not just making this up. It's not just my company. Next, as a buyer's agent, I think you need to be able to show where your value is. And this is just a rough draft of something I'm working on for myself, right? What differentiates me from the typical agent? Well, typical agent, I'll send you a home search from the MLS. Well, I can do interactive home searches through Real Scout and Homes.com, and we can interact on those the things, the homes you see. More importantly, if you know exactly what neighborhood you want to be in, I will proactively search for off-market housing for purchase opportunities for you. I'll proactively go out and market to people who aren't on the market right now. I tell you, 95+% of agents will not do that. Mortgage pre-approvals, right? I'll talk to you, basically all I'm saying is you need some kind of document, and I would say create a document because it really solidifies it when you can put it in writing. You have to be able to talk about it, but put it in writing. What makes you different than the other buyer's agents out there? What makes you worth paying than the other agents out there? Okay. So this is one I put here. You can't see all of it, but it says review of disclosures and reports. So you'd be surprised how many people, even experienced home buyers, I've had clients in the past say, oh, I bought homes in the past and my agent just sent me the reports and disclosures and told me to ask them if they have questions. That's anywhere between 100 and 300 pages of stuff in realtor speak or real estate speak that I guarantee you 90% of people are not going to wade through, and if they do, they don't really understand. One thing I do for my clients is I send them a summary of the disclosures and help them understand what I see as the major items. One thing I will say is if you're going to do this, you need a disclaimer, right? You do not want people to say, oh, I got this from Rich in this summary and I thought this was everything. I have a disclaimer that says, this is what I saw, these are the things I see as the major issue, but I encourage you to read the reports and you should take what the reports say directly over anything in this summary. That's just to cover my posterior. But how many agents provide some kind of summary to help their clients understand the disclosures and reports? We have 2 people other than myself raising their hands. If you create something like this, you can use it over and over again. And it's like, oh, you're not going to see this from most other agents. There's value you've added. So let's get to some questions about buyers, what buyers may be asking you. What if the buyer doesn't want to sign a buyer's representation agreement or says they're going to work with an agent that doesn't require it? So number one, I would tell them, hey, all agents have to do this now, right? It's not just me asking for you. It is an industry-wide change, nationwide. Second, if you do find an agent that is willing to do it without the buyer's representation agreement, you have found an agent that doesn't follow the law and is willing to cut corners. Are you comfortable doing your transaction with that person? You've got to turn it around. Instead of like, oh, well, Joe Blow will do it. Well, Joe Blow is breaking the law, essentially. Joe Blow is cutting corners. Are you comfortable buying a $1.5 million house with someone who's cutting corners? Yeah. Daryl's very excited about that response.
That just knocked out a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, this is objection handling. Second, I'll just work with the listing agent. Yogi, this is for you. Sure, you always have the right to work with the listing agent, but you have to consider a couple of things when you're going to work with that listing agent. First of all, the listing agent doesn't work for you. They aren't going to negotiate for you. They aren't going to try and push to get you a better deal, to get you repairs, to get you concessions. They're literally doing the paperwork to sell the house. But they work for the seller. They work for the seller's best interest. Okay. Second thing is they're likely going to require some kind of compensation. And that may come from the seller or it may come from you, but you're probably not going to save any money going to the listing agent. This is an objection handling, right? Why should you go to listing agents? They're not going to work on your behalf and you're going to get charged for it. Okay, next objection. I don't want to be committed to working with you and we just met. Essentially. Sure, that's fine. That's understandable. We have a representation agreement that is short term. It allows you to see 3 properties and it's only for 30 days. But we do have to have a representation agreement. That's just the way business is done now. But I understand, you know, we both want to get a sense of we're a good match. After that period, we can look into, you know, we can consider whether we want to have a full buyer's representation agreement. The key is you have to emphasize this just doesn't mean. You're going to have an agreement. Okay. All right, water break, guys. Next, my client doesn't have the funds to pay me. So we've kind of touched upon this already. This is often the case for buyers that are first-time buyers. And if they indicate on that form they don't have the money, that's okay. But if you do not somehow specify how you intend to get paid, and they indicate they don't have the money, essentially you are agreeing to work for free. You have to specify how you intend to get paid and any restrictions on the client to pay you. Or, you know, in other words, to buy a house where the seller is going to provide compensation. And if you do end up working for free, you still take on the liability and you still have the expenses associated with it. So I would be very careful if that box is checked, that you put in something that you're going to restrict your client to only purchasing houses that seller paid buyer's agent compensation is available. Okay, so communicating with sellers. Keys to educating sellers on why they should pay buyer's agent commission. So Dow has just said, I'm not even asking them. This is the way it's going to go. If you want to work with me, you're paying the agent commission. Yeah. But for those of us who aren't former MMA champions like Dow, who will put you in a headlock until you tap out. There's 2 things you have to emphasize to your seller. One, they're likely to net more money if they pay compensation to the buyer's agent. And I'm going to explain why that is momentarily. 2, their property is likely to sell significantly, I forgot a word, faster if they pay buyer's agent compensation. For most areas, if you offer 0 compensation, so for example, if you go to Antioch and you offer 0 compensation, that house is not selling. If you go to Palo Alto, you offer 0, your house will probably sell eventually. I mean, maybe not even take that long. But for most areas and most homes, if there's no compensation, your home is going to sit. And while it sits, you still pay mortgage on it, you still pay taxes on it, you still pay maintenance on it. It's costing you money. Yes, Liz?
Maria and I were looking at one listing by one of the peninsula realtors who sells billions or whatever. Anyway, he listed one for 0%. We were reading the description and he actually put 0% compensation, but if it stays on the market for the first, after 2 weeks, it's gonna go up to 1.5. For another 2 weeks, then it goes up to 2. So that's how we did it.
So, yes, so what Liz is saying is apparently this agent in the peninsula, and if you think prices in the East Bay are crazy, the peninsula takes you to a whole nother level. So this agent in the peninsula had written in that, I guess, negotiated with their seller that I don't remember the exact time frame, but during the first 2 weeks, zero compensation if it sells. After the first 2 weeks, between week 2 and 4, it goes up to 1.5% compensation. After week 4, it goes up to 2.5%. You can write that in. There's nothing that prevents you. And actually, if you have a client who's insistent, that may not be a bad strategy.
So for Santa Clara, just throwing it out there. I listened to the MLS meeting and they absolutely told us, no way, no how is there gonna be any field confidential or otherwise to talk about comp. And even if you put it on your own personal website, what will happen is if it gets translated in any way, shape, or form to any outside advertising, you will be fined at that point. So basically they said, keep it to phone conversations based on what you have signed in your agreement. But don't put it anywhere in the confidential or public remarks.
So so the comment was the Santa Clara board was saying that you cannot, you essentially cannot have it in any electronic form or any advertised anywhere, or they will fine you. As I noted earlier, I'm covering what is required by CAR. You have to know the rules of your individual board. I cannot cover all of that because we have people who are in every board between, I think, Sacramento and Ventura County. So that's a lot of boards.
Guys, let me, Rich, let me jump in real quick for that. To that point, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing until we get slapped is that on Disclosure.io, that type of thing, wherever your disclosures are based, you can have offer instructions. Within that offer instruction, if you're a listing agent, and you put that, seller is offering compensation of 2.5%, let's say, have that in your offer instructions at this point. Again, it's not to the general public. It's only available to, through that link. It's not being displayed anywhere else from that matter. And just like disclosures are, part of the process. So offer instructions are very common these days. You could have it on that because you will be constantly fielding calls on what's the compensation and this and that. So you can say, hey, everything's in the offer instructions on Disclosure.io, whatever you're using. So initially, you'll probably get a lot of text too.
Go ahead, David.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so you'll probably get some texts, of course, that, hey, are you offering compensation? So expect a lot of texts. All your listing agents expect a lot of texts, phone calls, this and that initially. And then eventually, best practice, eventually we'll see as the industry does it, more than likely the direction I'm seeing is that it'll just be an offer instructions and people will automatically know that, hey, here's a link in MLS to go to the disclosure package. It's in there. It'll automatically, we'll learn as an industry how to do it.
Yeah, and so what I'm covering here is what CAR says you can do. Your individual MLS may have individual rules that say, no, I don't care what CAR says, we're not allowing it locally. On Paragon, that may be different from Santa Clara. That may be different from MetroList.
Madeline made a good point. So we're with Santa Clara, and I'm with Big East. So let's just give an example. So I'm also with SAR. So SAR, they don't do coming soon, whereas Big East. So I have listings out there, and I do, because I'm with Big East, I only have to follow the Big East rules. So I can have a listing where I can have a listing in Santa Clara. As long as I'm following my rules with Bay East, I can put my notes in there. And I'm not going to what it sounds would be, as long as, like, if she was going to do it, she would be against report. But for me, as long as Bay East is okay with it.
So the question is basically, those of you who have been doing real estate for a while, you are aware that every board used to have their own independent MLS, and it was a nightmare. And they started sharing data, what was it, about 5 years ago, David, that they started sharing, David?
Yeah, roughly 5-6 years.
Yeah, so now you can share information across boards, right? So it's, it's hard to, I don't know the rules to the Sacramento board. I'm not part of the Sacramento board. You follow the rules of your board. You're not, from my perspective, responsible for the data transmission otherwise. Sacramento board, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, I'm not a member of the Sacramento board. Good luck trying to find me. Right? CCAR, I'm a member of. They can find me. I'm going to follow the rules according to CCAR. As long as, now, if you are an affiliate member or actually a member of both boards, then you've got to follow the rules of the board you are members of. But if my data from CCAR is being transmitted to Santa Clara and I'm breaking the Santa Clara rules, as long as I follow the CCAR rules, I'm not worried.
Yeah, you guys don't stress too much on it. And remember this, that nothing excites the MLS more than to threaten us with fines. So you will get a warning, and then a fine warning, and then another warning if you're doing this. So, and I get CC'd on all of those. So don't stress about it. Just make sure that, hey, you're not writing something in the public comments, some code word, like, text Yogi and you'll get the compensation auto response. So there's nothing that you can write on there from that, or text comp to me and I'll tell you. So just don't put anything like that. But believe it or not, all of these guys, they get together, they have meetings constantly. All the MLSs, they're trying to come to some universal, foundational rules here, and we'll see. All those will spill out shortly here. So don't stress yourself about that. Main thing right now is focus on how you're going to sell your buyer's agents, your buyers to work with you as a buyer's agent, and then work on getting your compensation. Everything else is just admin stuff that you don't really have to worry about yet. And you'll be the first one to know if you violate it. They'll warn you. That's it. And then if they, worst case, you're looking at $100 fine in certain cases. I don't want to be fined either, but at the same time, they'll alert us, and then we'll correct the action. We'll take corrective action, and that's it. And we move on.
Question.
So, yes.
So if you
Go ahead.
Okay. So when will MLS Paragon change? Like, is it going to be exactly on the 17th?
So I will encourage you to go to your board webpage and find out. So for CCAR, on their homepage, they have put a notice that Paragon through CCAR, I know it's a little bit different for Bay East, how the system works. It's August 12th.
Okay.
Right? So you have to go to your MLS homepage. They will probably have something on there telling you when they're implementing it.
But legally it's the 17th.
17th is the last day, but others are implementing it sooner.
Okay. So if we're working with a buyer right now, and we don't have any of these forms done, we need to get them done before the 12th.
Yeah.
Here, guys, Daryl, so thanks for bringing that up, because this is the perfect thing. We have forms handouts for you guys, what to do in the interim during the transition period.
Yes.
What to do if you're a listing broker, what to do if you're a buyer's agent, all of that stuff. So you guys will get that. So in terms of, do I need to switch anything over? Do I need to do this or that? No, not if your board is still showing the compensation you have, and you got into contract. There's no additional form that you need to do. I would encourage you, of course, to take a, save a picture, save a MLS sheet, whatever's left on what the compensation was. But there's this transition period and implementation period. There's specific forms that we have today to give to you guys too on what to do in the scenarios, whether you're a listing agent or you're a buyer's agent. Okay, and that will explain to you, because we're trying to save you from redoing a bunch of stuff that you don't necessarily need to redo. If you're already you already have your listing in play, or you're already representing a client and you're ratified and you're in escrow, and they're like, hey, well, now what do I need to work on my compensation? No, you don't, because you're already ratified under when MLS was publishing the comp at that time. So if anyone has questions about the transition periods, it's best to look at those forms, and you still can't figure it out, then Rich and I can help you on that too.
So there are questions coming in the chat. I'm going to push on because there is a Q&A session at the end. I want to finish this and then we'll get into more questions, okay? So we're talking about sellers, Miss Seller. So if the seller's like, oh, you know, I don't, you know, should I pay? I don't want to pay. I'm not sure. My message is basically this. You're never obligated to pay. Don't ever say you have to pay. That gets us in trouble. You are never obligated. There are two reasons. It's to your financial benefit to pay.
Makes sense.
Okay? Reason one, you are likely to net more from the sale. When I start talking, so I actually took a listing last weekend and I actually had to have this conversation. They were like, I only want to pay one or whatever it was. You start this conversation with, for most people, would you agree that when you buy a house, you only have a limited set of funds, right? Whether it's $10,000 or $200,000, most people don't have just unlimited funds beyond what their budget is to buy a house. Almost everyone's going to say yes, unless you're talking to Mark Zuckerberg or, you know, some of his friends. They have pretty much unlimited money, but most people have a limited budget. That is an important thing to get them to agree with because it makes the rest of this conversation easier that I'm going to go through. Would you agree most people who buy a house have a limited set of budget? No matter what they're going to use that money for in the house buying process, it's all the money they have. Second, you have to explain to people. Wow. You have to explain to people that how leverage works. When you get a mortgage, for every $1 you put down in down payment, you generally get a minimum of $4 for mortgage, right? 80-20 financing, $1 down gets you $4 of mortgage financing. If you're doing 90-10 finance, $1 down gets you $9 of financing. So you have to say, hey, Mr. Seller, remember, every dollar that buyer no longer has to pay for your house is anywhere between $4 and $9 in mortgage financing they can no longer get. Those are the key concepts you have to talk to your sellers about. So in scenario A, what if in scenario A, the buyer pays $10,000 for their agent? Well, that's fine. They had $100,000 total. So now we don't even for down payment. And I'm taking out closing costs and all the rest of that to make it simple. But now that we have $90,000 for down payment. Well, if they're doing 80-20 financing, 9 times 4 is 360. The most they can afford is 90,000 plus 360, which is 450. That is the most they can afford to pay for your house. Well, if you're trying to sell your house for 500,000, that person is no longer a candidate. You have just excluded them because they have you want them to pay $10,000 for their agent. But what if instead you said, you know, I'll take $10,000 from my compensation when I sell the house and I'll pay the buyer's agent. That's great. Now the buyer has their full $100,000 because of that leverage effect. $4 for every $1, they can get $400,000 in financing for a total purchase price of $500,000. So because the seller paid the $10,000, their sales price went up $50,000 because of mortgage finance leveraging. You have to have this conversation with the vast majority of sellers. They don't think about this. You're just thinking, oh, this is money out of my pocket. Okay?
Rich, can you share with us slides?
This whole presentation will be available. I will send it to everybody. If you are here in the office, please sign in so we know you're here and we can send it out to you. Those online, I think we have a recording of everyone online. Otherwise, just reach out to me or the office staff and we'll make sure you get it, okay? Second thing, sellers are likely to sell their home faster. So we get to that point of you're still paying mortgage, you're still doing this, you're still doing that to maintain your house. You can't move until you sell this house. Or if you have moved, you're still paying for the house, right? You have a group of buyers. Your neighbor across the street puts up the same model home for the same price across the street. Only difference is they're paying $10,000 to the buyer's agent. You want the buyer to pay their own agent. Who do you think the pool of buyers are going to go to first? Your neighbor across the street with the identical house, right? You have to tell your sellers it isn't all about what you want. You are still competing against other sellers in the market. If to buyers, it's to their best interest to go to another seller, even if their house isn't quite as good, but it's a better financial decision for them, that's what they're going to do. The buyer doesn't care about giving you an extra $10,000, Mr. Seller. They care about their best financial interest. So you've got to remember, you're competing against other sellers out there. And of course, you might want to say that a little bit more diplomatically than I delivered that. But that's the message, basically. You're competing against other home sellers. It's not just what you want, Mr. Seller or Ms. Seller. Yes.
Now the sellers are not going to be able to see that, the other, the property across the street or the seller across the street is offering, compensation to the selling office as they do now and before, right? They won't be able to see that information online.
Right. So they won't be able to see it online. So the question was, if they can't see it online, how will they know what the person across the street is doing? And that's a good point. But here's what's going to end up happening, right? You're going to start getting calls, and if there are two homes on this market, and both listing agents are getting calls on who's competing, you're going to see this house sell first. Let this happen 2 or 3 times to your seller, and they will get the clue, even if it isn't published. So you can wait. We can waste a month if you want.
How will they know if it's not published? I mean, by word of mouth?
Because
They'll call you if they're interested.
What's going to happen, in my view, is when they start seeing houses in their area, and as a listing agent, if the neighbor's going to come across the street, I'm going to call them and ask them what the deal is. I'm going to say, hey, I have a buyer. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to do my homework. And if their house is sitting and I've made calls to all the other homes in the area that have come on after their home and sold before their home, and they're all compensating and you're not, that's your problem. So you're going to have to do a little homework. But you have to make sure your sellers realize, one, it's to their financial best interest because they can get a higher sales price, and 2, you're competing against other sellers, and buyers will do what's in their best interest. They don't care about saving you $10,000 because then it's $10,000 out of their pocket. Okay, questions and answers. So here's some of the questions I've been getting. I have an existing listing. Do I need to redo my listing agreement? So I have a current listing in Oakland. I've had a conversation with my client about this. You have 2 options. Must implement one of them by August 17th. Completely redo your residential listing agreement is fine. That's actually the preferred option according to CAR, according to their trainings and town halls. Or you can do, there is a form called a dedicated modification of listing agreement. You can do that. But one or the other has to be done by August 17th. We're also going to give you some additional forms to answer scenarios, as Navit mentioned. Next question.
Yeah, I put those in the chat box, Rich, for these guys as well.
Actually, they're going to show
for
up
those
later.
forms.
It's going to show up later in the presentation, David. And,
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So if the seller what?
I was just going to say I'm enjoying all the Dow jokes from the. I'm laughing.
Well, you're not here, so someone has to do the Dow.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So if the seller authorizes promotion of the seller concessions as required by MLSA, can I post this on the MLS? My answer is dependent on your MLS rules. I'm just answering according to CAR. Our forms allow this. The reality is you have to understand your specific MLS rules. What if I've already been working with a buyer? Do I need to have a representation agreement? Yes. No exceptions by August 17th. Okay. No, oh, I'll just show you one house or what have you. You need the representation agreement.
I'm wanting now.
And let me stop for a second. If you look at the representation agreement as just a drawback, it isn't. It is now getting commitment from your buyers to work with you. They're not, it's not to their advantage to try and shop, work with 12 agents and just see who comes up first, right? This gets more commitment from your client, right? Okay, next question. I'm already in contract escrow. Do I need a BARBC or a new listing agreement? So if you are in escrow, in contract right now, you do not need to change anything. This is not, oh, I'm negotiating it now, or I might be in contract by now, but by the 17th, if you're in contract before, you don't have to close before, but you have to be in contract before the 17th, you're not required to do the new process. But if you go into contract after the 17th, you do need to do the new process. So if you're getting close to the 17th, just do the new process. Save yourself free. What if I forget to request seller concession for buyer agent compensation in the RPA? Will I get paid? You remember I emphasized that little box is going to be your life if you're a buyer's agent. It depends, but it may be unlikely. It depends on the situation. I can't give you a yes or no. Seller paid buyer compensation is now a negotiable part of the of a transaction, right? It isn't, hey, it's not the old system where they just agreed to pay. Now this is another financial consideration the seller has when they're looking at offers. So you may run into a situation that the seller picked your offer based on the fact that they didn't have to pay any compensation. If that's the case, they might be kind of cranky about having to pay compensation. But if they go, you know what, we advertised 2.5, I forgot the box, you haven't actually executed it, you're going back and forth, the seller's agent goes, hey, did you miss this box? That's fine, you can make a change, you may be able to negotiate a change. But once they sign that contract, you have an executed contract, and you did not check that box, the seller is not required to renegotiate with you. So this is why I have emphasized that little box is going to be very important if you're a buyer's agent. You really do not want to put yourself in this position of having to basically ask for your compensation. Oops. If you are in this situation, does your buyer have the funds to close? You may choose to do the transaction without compensation, but we have discussed why that is probably something you don't want to do. So the lesson here is check the box. Check the box. Please don't make this mistake. This will cause tears if you do all this work and don't get compensated. Okay, I heard that open house visitors will be required to sign in. Or how are we going to do open houses? Well, yes and no. So there is a new form called open house non-agency sign-in. This is the abbreviation. Good luck remembering this one. That open house visitors are the sign. So what this form says is it essentially allows people to come in and you to have a conversation about real estate without any expectations on either side that you have an agency relationship. It does not, it means the buyer or the visitor is not obligated to compensate you, and you have no legal responsibility to that visitor. Now, if they say, hey, can they still visit it? If they refuse to sign in, and the form, if you have not seen it, it has a description at the top and like 7 or 8 sign-in slots. It's like a sign-in sheet, basically. If they don't want to sign in, they can still come to the open house. However, you must be very careful about providing real estate specific information. So for example, if they ask you, if they have not signed in and they ask you, how far away is the BART station? You can answer that. It's a factual question. Does this condo come with covered parking? You can answer that. But where you have to be careful is getting into real estate advice type questions if they have not signed in. So this is according to CAR and through the trainings. Do you think the price of homes will soften? You're giving advice, real estate advice. How do I get pre-approved for a mortgage, or do you have someone who can pre-approve me? It's advice, once again, on real estate. So I'd be very careful. You have to be cautious when you talk to your clients. You don't want to be rude, but you also have to protect yourself in the new environment. And you have to say, hey, I'd love to have more in-depth conversation, but under the new rules, I have to, you know, ask you to sign so I can do this without obligating you to pay me and without me taking on legal liability. All right. Avoid anything that could be considered being advice if they do not sign in.
We can give them a brochure though.
Give them a brochure.
Okay.
Because that's just facts about the house, basically, and the neighborhood, right? What happens if I don't have a BRBC form completed before showing homes or making offers? Well, as Yogi will tell you, you won't do this. Yogi will tell you, no one does this. This is not allowed. Making offers. So we're all humans. You may somehow forget. You will get used to doing this. The first month or so, you know, there's a learning curve for all of us. But you must get in the habit of doing the BRBC, or I can't even remember the acronym for the other short-term representation form. One or the other has to be done. So we will start checking in your transactions as we implement this that you have this BRBC. You have to have it. Okay. And the key is you have to get in the habit of not doing it just with all the rest of your disclosures. You have to do it up front. And the reason why is if we're audited or sued, that's the first place they're going to start. So if you have it done with all the rest of your disclosures, you are not following the rules. So get used to doing it's essentially like a listing agreement. You can't put a listing up on the MLS without an agreement. You can't take someone out to show homes without an agreement. Just get used to it. Okay? It is the equivalent of the listing agreement now. So this is what David was talking. So CAR has put out some like one-page scenarios. What do we do during certain situations? So they have one. If you're a buyer's broker, post the change after August 18th. If you go to this QR code, you will get a PDF that handles that situation. If you are a listing broker, post the changes. Here's the one-page PDF that the CAR has created. So those QR codes should take you to the PDFs. Two other scenarios. Buyer's broker during the transition period. PDF. This will take you to that PDF. Listing brokers this is during listing during the transition. This will take you to the appropriate PDF. These are CAR PDFs that they created.
You guys, these are really good. They answer the questions. They're clear, concise. So it's good formats. I've already put it in the chat box as well, but definitely encourage you guys, everyone, to refer to this during the transition period for these 4 scenarios, right? Depending on what side of the transaction you're on, whether listing or buyer. So definitely review that, please.
All right. I think we're winding up. So Once again, this QR code will take you to the training. It is CAR on-demand video training. I'm going to encourage you to remember that it is free, but to get it for free, A, you have to be logged on to CAR, and B, they have little instructions once you go through the process of purchasing the course. There is a discount code. I think the discount is Forms 49. That will cause, when you actually purchase it, the price will drop to zero. If you are not logged on, they try and charge you $98 for the course. If you are logged on and don't put in the discount code, they try to charge you $49 for the course. You have to be logged on.
That's really sneaky. That's so sneaky.
They're probably making money on it. Trust me.
I'm sure they are, but that's so lame-o that you gotta, we're members and we still have to put the promo code on top of that too. So, but anyway, that's my 2 cents of that. By the way, Rich, I heard that you're offering pizza to everyone.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It's coming. It's on its way. And Rich, would you be so kind enough, since I'm not there, to bring Cheryl to the front and ask her the 5 hot topic questions, her initiation questions?
So since we have everyone here, so let me just wrap up. Please, please, please do the course. This is your business. This is your money. I have just scratched the surface. There are other documents that have changed and more in-depth description that they give during the trainings. So please do it. It's going to take about 2 hours to go through it. Would you guess, David? A little more than 2 hours.
Correct.
But this is how you make your living. So you have to devote the time to it. So I think there are more questions in the chat, but I want to introduce everyone to Cheryl, who is the new officer. Come on screen.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Cheryl.
Hi. Good to meet you all virtually.
Number 5.
So Cheryl is here Monday through Friday, and she is a joy to be around. I'm happy she is here, and that's really about it. So I'm going to take some more questions. I'm going to go through the chat. I'm going through the chat here. If we update or redo our listing agreement, can we relist it and start the days on market over again? I'm going to leave this one to David.
Yeah, well, why not? Let's do it. Let's restart it. If you want to restart it, restart it.
So there's your answer. Let me go see if there are other questions. I've seen it publicly on Zillow, Realtor.com. Seller agrees to pay buyer's agent 2.5%. So
I responded to that
a little bit of the Wild West for a while, but like I said, follow CAR rules and follow your own MLS rules. Don't worry about what other people are doing.
Yeah, so Janelle's question, that's been on Janelle for a while, that Zillow has been putting what the buyer's compensation is, buyer's agent compensation, but that's going to go away too. So you won't be seeing that. And there's speculation that there's going to be third-party websites that are going to come up that are going to show compensation. There's already some URLs floating around on what that is, but those most likely will get a cease and desist letter, and they won't be able to have that information. So again, my thought process right now, until we hear otherwise, is just to put in your offer instructions right at the top, compensation in bold, being offered by sellers 2.5%, so you can avoid the the redundancy of being asked 100 times over, what are you guys offering? Because we're all going to have to get used to that for a while until the industry again formulates a standard best practice, and then everyone will know, hey, it's in there.
Okay, so Eddie asks, I have a listing that's on waiver until 8/17. So I assume you mean it's temporarily withdrawn or something like that. Do I have to redo it all? So you need to either do the modification of listing terms or you need to do a new listing agreement, Eddie. But my answer is that your current listing agreement as of 8/17 is not enough. You either need to do the modification or you need to do a new listing agreement. I have a listing coming on the market tomorrow. Do I and the seller need to sign additional documents? Tatiana. So what I would say is, unless it's going to be sold by the 17th, you're sure of that, or you're going to be in contract by the 17th, I would just do the paperwork now. But yes, you do need to do either a modification or you need to redo the listing agreement. What forms are required at open house? We just covered that, Jazz. Hopefully I got your question. What if I have a listing agreement already signed and approved with the buyer compensation already in it? Do I need a new agreement by the 17th? So this is Victor. Yes. So if you're using the old form that says seller to compensate buyer's agent, whatever the amount, you need to either do the modification of listing agreement or you need a new listing agreement. Let's see, there are new questions. Yes, I got it, Jazz. Okay. So any other questions? I think I've covered it. Anyone online have questions? So there is a training tomorrow here in the office about ADUs. And the training tomorrow, or the presentation tomorrow, is essentially an ADU broker. And so if you don't know who to best pick for an ADU for elderly or to rent out or build on a side of a hill or whatever, this person, this company goes around and actually finds the right ADU manufactured home for you. And the manufacturer actually pays them, right? There's no cost to your, I thought that was interesting because we've had a number of ADU builders come in, but not essentially an ADU broker. Mm-hmm. So that's tomorrow. He's going to come in and explain that. To anyone who's here tomorrow after that presentation, if you want to practice your delivery of this new stuff, I am here. I will make about an hour to an hour and a half of my time available tomorrow for role plays, talking, additional questions, what have you. The training, I think, is 11. Layla, is it 11? Did I schedule it for 11 tomorrow? Yeah, it's 11. It's at 11 o'clock. It's an hour. So for lunch tomorrow, if you want to go through and ask me additional questions, I will make myself available after that training. Okay?
So the ADU broker is at 11 o'clock tomorrow.
11 o'clock tomorrow. It will, did we set it up for Zoom? Layla is the brains. I'm just the talking head. So she said we did set it up for Zoom. But if you, to do the practice, if you want to talk about working through this or practice, I'm only doing that in person. I am not doing that on Zoom. It is too difficult to do it that way. All right. So if you want to come in for the presentation, and afterwards I'll devote an hour to an hour and a half to helping people. All right.
11 o'clock, you said?
11 o'clock tomorrow. Any other questions online or?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I will ask a question. I will make a request for David, hopefully. If you found this helpful and I made it a little bit more concise, share the experience on social media because it helps Realty One with our recruiting and shows, hey, we're being proactive about this, helps us recruit other agents. So do a little post that you got. If you like the training, that, it was beneficial. If you really hated me standing up here for 2 hours, just keep it to yourself. It's okay. It's okay. But if you did find it helpful and it answered your questions, please share it so other people know that, hey, you get help here. Right? There is pizza.
Great job, Rich.
Oh, I don't want to do it.
Great job.
If
All right,
you
talk
or
to you guys
anybody
later.
missed this, I'm doing this session again August 7th to help, in case someone missed it. Same session, same presentation.
Thank you.
David, did you want something?
No, I was just saying great job, and I will chat with you guys later.
Okay. See y'all.
Thanks, Rich.
You're welcome.